Hi, the date is the 17th of July, 2026, and I had a lot of problems. I still have a lot of problems, and I was like, why am I running away from my problems and just focusing on improving the quality of my life instead of facing my actual issues? And I went home after making the video about confronting my actual problems, and I was like, man, I should have done this from the start. Just focus on my problems and just enjoy the rest of my life. And then the next day came around and I started to think, which is always a bad idea. And I didn't even scratch the surface on the amount of problems I have. Like that awareness thing. Of course, these are problems like generational stuff and stuff from my childhood that I have to work through, and I notice everything between the perfect version of me and how I am now, or the version of me with no problems or all their problems solved, and I can see all of those problems, and I was like, holy crap, I don't want to face all these problems. I should just improve the quality of my life instead of face these problems. Then I was like, wait a minute, that's what I've been doing. I just haven't been facing my problems, and I now see why. Because there's just so much I have to go through, and I can see that there's so many different problems that I'll have to face. And so how do I solve this? There's so many problems. I would rather just go and improve the general quality of my life instead of face those problems and just face them sometime in the future. But that's not really a workable thing. So my new solution is going to be split it into chunk-sized pieces. Why should I have to deal with my generational stuff, my, stuff my parents passed down to me, stuff I developed like throughout just living life? Why should I have to take all that on at once? So I'm going to take on the stuff that is right in front of me right now, which is, first of all, the problems around my health and the problems around my, I don't know, what other problems? The problems around my self-worth and maybe a little bit on my confidence. And I'm gonna cut it into bite-sized pieces, because putting all of my potential issues on an 18-year-old, just being 18 years old and moving out of the house and already just having to live life in general is too much. It is not doable. And so I'm gonna stop doing that and just take them on in bite-sized pieces, because I recently had a conversation with my parents, or my mom specifically, and she's become very more aware than she was when she was parenting us. And she pointed out a few things that she may have passed down to me, and I was like, holy crap, you did pass all that down to me, and now I'm gonna have to work through this stuff. And it's not the worst of things. It's just simple things that are workable through, but there's a lot of them. And then add that on top of other stuff, on the things that I developed on my own, the issues, and then it's just like, holy crap, I don't want to face any of this. I'm going to go and make a really good morning routine instead of actually confront my insecurities. But of course, that's not viable, so I'm going to actually have to work through them in small pieces, just little pieces, and a few things that I need to remember when working through them, that when you're working through anything, you have to remember is you've got time. You don't have to work through things all at once. The fact that you're working through them is really good. And also so the fact that you're working through them is really good. And then around taking the action of fixing them, it's you realize once you actually start fixing the issues, they're actually really simple steps. Be open to change and go get therapy. Simple. Be Be open to the idea that you're not a worthless piece of rubbish, and try living life as not a worthless piece of rubbish. and also look back on what you have solved in the past, because like if I look back on how I was masking, no real friends, a people pleaser, delusional, and all these other things, I'm like, hey, I've come pretty far. And it's also part of accepting what is, because I don't really know how to label it. I guess, some people would say I'm neurodivergent or typical or whatever, or I got like the TISM and diagnosed with ADHD or whatever. I don't like labels. I don't like putting labels on things. I always used to just believe it was coping, and that things are how they are and you can just take them on as they are. But I realized that not accepting that my brain was different than other people's I was comparing myself against is not accepting things how they are. It's denial. And I think the big thing around having grace with yourself is accept things as they are, but don't compare yourself to other people's progress, because that's especially big when taking on problems. If I go and compare myself to everybody else who may not even have these problems, I'm just going to feel bad. So, I'm accepting that I'm different than other people. My brain is wired differently, and I'm kind of entering it with the perspective that everybody's brain is different, and, people look like they have their stuff sorted out, and maybe I'm a bit more logical and struggle with the emotional stuff a bit more. But at the end of the day, whether I compare myself with other people or feel bad about myself or not, these are things that I'm going to have to tackle, and I'm not going to deny it anymore. I'm not going to be like, yeah, I'm just like everybody else. I just have like a few things different. I just have a few extra problems that I'm working through. I'm not, I've got, everybody's different. Everybody's different, and my brain is not the same as your brain is not the same as my brain, nobody is the same, and after accepting that, you can kind of take a more open approach to solving anything that you would consider an issue. But yeah, that's kind of the end of the video. The wind's really picking up over here, and that's kind of all I had to say. Thanks for watching. That's the end of the video.